Well, audience members, you've seen my face before. I think at this point, excited to introduce our panel today, Women Investing in Women. We have Kim and Leslie here. So they're going to give us a kind of this virtual fireside chat where they'll talk about their experiences as females, both on the founding side as well as on the investing side. We're going to leave a couple of minutes near the end. I would say somewhere around 5 to 8 minutes for questions. So please feel free to be active in the chat. If you have any questions at the end, we're going to try to go through them. So we're excited about the panel. And I'll just hand it off over to Kim and Leslie. Thank you all so much
for having us. Oh my goodness. Faces. A lot of it seems like we may have more founders on the phone than investors, which is what I expected. But hi, people I recognize like Carrie and Natalie. And anyway, we're delighted to be here, Kim and I. It's strange to do this when I can't see anybody. I've never done a video conference where you can see everybody on it, right, Kim? So
yeah, it's really
so we were tasked with shining a spotlight on investments made in women-led companies and discussing what attributes are mandatory for securing investments, why it's important to think a certain way as a female founder, and how female investors, male investors. Ooh, that's an easy one. There was a great article today, which I'm going to point you all to because I'm so excited about it. Goldman Sachs sent it out about how female investors are doing better. Anyway, but Kim and I will talk about the fact that, you know, there's a real business case for women funders and founders. There's a real disparity in funding going to women. We could talk about some of the reasons why, but I will bet you that most of you people on this call are woke and probably understand some of the reasons. Then maybe some of the acute issues that COVID has created for female founders. So I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm going to introduce the fund. I'm general partner and co-fund, and then Kim will introduce herself, and she will introduce Topple, which is what she is. She is CEO and co-founder of Topple. So as I mentioned, I am the general partners of the Artemis Fund with two other female general partners, Diana Murakovskaya and Stephanie Campbell. We're based in Houston, Texas, and we're the first female-founded and female-focused fund in Houston, and one of the very few across the country. I know that there's another completely female-run, female-focused fund on this call. That's True Wealth Ventures. They're out of Austin, so I'll give a shout out because they inspired us. Thank you, Carrie. So the Artemis Fund, we invest in high-growth, tech-enabled female founders solving a real-world problem. So in other words, all of our companies have impact, tremendous impact. We invest in the areas of fintech, life tech, which is very broad, and sustainability. We've made 4 investments so far. We have a term sheet for a 5th. And 2 of our companies that we've invested in have already raised rounds at higher valuations, giving us a quote-unquote markup. We're raising and investing at the same time, and we're closing our fund in about 2000. There's plenty of pipeline. The deals come from excited. So, we like to price rounds. We like to take a board observer seat, and become very involved with our company. So the reasons, and I'll give you a little about me. Oh my goodness, my phone. The reasons that we started the fund, well, one of the reasons we started the fund was we wanted to capitalize on the fact that there are so many, and now I've lost the video, there's so many women creating amazing solutions to big problems and are poised to make huge returns. Also, 11% of all venture capitalists are women. Of all decision-making venture capitalists are women. That number has really not moved very much in the last few years. It went from like 8% 2016 to 11%. Women founders still get less than 3% of all the money that's out there, and we're talking in, you know, $130+ billion. Less than 3% is really, really small considering we're half the population. And we'll talk a little bit later, I think, about the data that shows superior returns in investing in diverse teams. I think the evidence is uncontroversial that diverse teams perform better. More and more, there's an article every day about the business case for diversity. I practiced corporate law for over 25 years before I started angel investing and fund investing. And I have invested now in over 45 companies, including Topple, which Kim will tell you about. I personally invested in. I've invested in 11 funds, and I'm actually involved in some of those funds in various capacities. And I'm an advisory board member and board member of several startups and the Houston Angel Network. And I'm very, very, very entire scene. So in all aspects of the startup and entrepreneurial scene. So I think what I'm going to do now is, because I feel like I've been talking a long time, even if it's only been, I'm going to turn it over to Kim so she can tell
you. Perfect. Yes, we're losing you a little bit, Leslie, but I think we're good. Yeah, you were cutting out a little bit, but I think we're good right now. I think I could still, I got everything you said. But hi, everyone. I am Kim Rath. I'm actually originally from South Africa. I'm the CEO and founder of Topple. We started Topple, hence the reason I know Leslie and them, out of Rice University here in Houston, Texas. And I actually came to the US originally on a track and field scholarship about 12 years ago now, where I started my journey into STEM. I have a very strong, I had a math undergrad, a master's in economics and a PhD in statistics. So I have been in the female side of STEM world for a long time. And then I started a company, a blockchain company. Topple is we call ourselves an impact technology company, and we are helping businesses prove their ethical and sustainable practices. So we have done everything now from, we have various different traceability platforms that use our technology to prove everything from, what in your coffee, from bean to brew, or as my other female counterparts in my company say, from farmer to frappe. And then also we've seen diamond traceability platforms. So this stone, I actually know the exact day it was born, the exact location it came from, the exact journey it made its way all the way here to Houston, Texas, where the jewelers here in Texas actually catered for me. And so I had a nice birth certificate for it. So I tracked it just like you would your pizza or your Uber. I was able to track this diamond using our technology all the way from the source to the sale here. So that is Topple. Me personally, as I mentioned, came to the US a few years ago, about 10 years. Before, though, I spent about a year working in development finance around the world. I spent about a year in 18 different countries doing primarily disaster relief funding. So what I would do is we were boots on the ground, helping organizations do anything from tsunami rebuilding to Guatemala mudslide rebuilding. And I was primarily responsible for tracking the actual outcomes that were happening in these areas, putting the funding into these projects, and then tracking that funding back to and reporting the impact back to the stakeholders. So I personally come from a mining and agriculture family, hence the diamonds. So I've seen a lot of emerging market opportunities, and the reason why we really started Topple is we realized that there were a lot of companies changing the world, but they had no way to prove it. So as you will see, our slogan when you go to our website is, "You change the world, we'll help you prove it." So that's kind of my story, my journey, things that I'm very proud of. I am one of the only female CEOs in the blockchain space, actually building a blockchain from scratch, not a platform on a blockchain. We are a heavy tech company. We have, a bunch of us with PhDs, but also we are 40% female. And also my first round of funding last year, I had 40% female investors. I've also recently transitioned. We had laid out a very strong D&I plan. We recently transitioned our board to now a minority majority board. And so we have really been focused at Topple to really move this needle forward and trying to make it more accessible for everyone, not just like female CEOs, but also just females in startups to be able to access the network. And so I'm very excited to have this discussion with Leslie on all the nitty gritties that we've seen, me and fundraising and her, and just like seeing what female founders do and shouldn't do and can do better, and how we can work towards a a better like woke future. Like I'm very excited about it.
The first thing is we need to change the number of female funders. So in order to get, because research shows that venture capital firms with a female partner are more than twice as likely as firms without a female partner to invest in a company with a woman on the management team. And they're 3 times as likely to invest in women CEOs. So the lack of women investing in partners in VC firms is a problem. Creates homogeneity, and also will not result in the companies that we need to see to solve our, well, all the companies we need to see to solve our future, our problems of the future and the present. But before, I wanted to mention that today there was, hot off the press, the CNBC article that women managed funds are outperforming as tech exposure pays off. It's Goldman Sachs. The quote that I really liked from this was, quote, adjusting for volatility, the median fund with all women portfolio managers has returned more than double that of the typical all-male managed fund. So woohoo. So somebody asked a question about how do I get funding? Who do I go to if I don't? And this is relevant because I was going to talk about it anyway. If I'm not necessarily a female founded or entirely female founded, if I have less than 50%. There is, for all of you founders, there is a report called Project SAGE, SAGE. It just came out. It's a report about gender, all of the funds that are gender lens investing, at least the ones they could discover. It came out of Wharton. And they have the data on the, not only the data on the funds, but the names of the funds themselves that are gender focused funds. So there's 138 that they surveyed and found, including me, ours, the Artemis Fund, and True Wealth on this call. And there may be other funds on this call. I just don't know because it's hard for me to look at the chat at the same time. I'm just trying to glance. 47% of those gender lens funds, they launched in 2019. That means some of them are still raising like we are. Actually, all of them would still be raising like we are, which is great during COVID. But 50% of those, so only 70 of those are VC funds, but 60% are seed stage. So that's interesting.
Name, by the way, Yanira, it's Project SAGE.
Project SAGE, yeah. So somebody could actually Google and find the, if somebody could Google and find the site, then you could put it. So 75% of them are still raising, but even of those funds, 48% of those 130 are women, which is weird because this is gender lens investing. 20% of those funds are all men of the 138. So I just find it fascinating. Anyway, a little bit more about the statistics. So we mentioned that under 3%, but once women do get funding, they perform, the statistic is 63% better once they get funding. They also perform better. Isn't that amazing? So what do you think of that? What's your take on that, Kim, that percentage?
I think it is. So interestingly, I'm actually going to share something with you guys. So I was not the original CEO. What we did as Topple is we started this company together, 3 founders, and this is kind of the answer to all the people who are saying like not majority owned. So we had earlier this year when I finished, I defended my PhD in January. And one of the things we had seen through the genesis of Topple was just this push towards, I just became way more the actual CEO in the company. And so what was really interesting is we had to sit down. We are 3 co-founders. And in February, we sat down and we actually did like an analysis of, strengths and weaknesses. And I have to give my 2 co-founders massive kudos for being able to sit down and say, yeah, Kim, you are supposed to be the CEO of this company. Chris runs product, James runs tech. and this is how we should move forward. And the fact that we could sit down and think through strengths and weaknesses, and one of those strengths was very much the meticulousness of which I manage this company. And so it's always that thing when I see that number, I'm not surprised, because I do feel that a lot of the female founders I have met in this journey has been a lot more from a, how do you actually think about future plan and executing that future plan, and, tracking your behavior and being able to, claim the things that you, or say the things that you're claiming are true. And I think that's something Leslie and I even last night on the phone had talked about. I think a mistake female founders make is we always think we have to check every box. We think we have to, be able to hit every metric, but that is also a double-edged sword, because it allows us to also think through, like, how are we going to execute on these next steps and these plans. And I think that's why female founders, when they say we are going to achieve X by this time, I do believe that there's a lot within us that is a little bit more of, we need to check a box. So we are definitely going to not lie about this or oversell it. And so it can count against you in some ways, right? Like I come from a STEM background. So I, as a statistician and a mathematician as an undergrad, was told multiple times that I will not be as good as my male counterparts. And so it was always that thing of me checking the box and saying, okay, when will I be good as a male counterpart in a stats PhD? And so I actually ended up getting NSF graduate research fellowship. And then all of a sudden, because now I got this research fellowship, I am now an equal. There's definitely things like that, Leslie, that I'm not surprised that women go through life wanting to make sure we check all boxes. And that's why a lot of female founders are seeing so much performance. Because I don't think female founders want to claim something that they can't do. But that's also I'm very much like generalizing, so I don't want to generalize too much. I do think it's a trait, and I could say that.
I totally agree with you. Well, I did some recruiting, some executive recruiting for 3 years in between law and in between practicing law and starting this fund, and it was the same thing with candidates. They were very reluctant to apply if they did not check all the boxes for female candidates. In particular, male candidates would apply if they had one box checked, and they would say, I'm perfect. So it was fascinating. I did a lot of coaching on okay, so let's not talk about what you don't have. Let's talk about what you do have and why that is important, and actually it balances out what you think you don't have. So it's very, very common. And I also see it when when in numbers, in the financial, in the pro formas on in decks for founders. I think women tend to, so this is a big generalization, be more realistic. Although I'm seeing more and more they are being as aspirational as some of their male counterparts, but they definitely tend to be more realistic. And sometimes I have to say, can you give me the best, medium, and worst case scenario so that we can see that you actually.
I'm going to Leslie has actually asked me that exact question.
And Kim is going through a round right now, actually, of funding, just so it's very interesting that the time period that you're in, with institutional investors for the first time. So I'm really interested in hearing, because this is a great audience for this. Tell me about the difference in terms of reception. I'm an angel investor and I'm a VC, and I'm one of the few women angel investors that I know, and I'm one of the few female VCs that I know. And I want to understand, what is the difference in terms of the way you present or the reception you have had from angel investors who are individuals writing smaller checks versus venture capitalists who are, you're probably in a room full of men on both sides, but venture capitalists who write much larger checks and want to take a role on the board, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, there's a few things. I have actually spoken to, Leslie is correct, I'm actually finishing up a round right now. I have talked to 80 VCs. I actually did the math last night. I have talked to 80 different venture capital funds in the last 6 months. And I actually went and looked like who I talked to. Like some of them I didn't make it to the partner level, right? But most of them I would principal, or like I actually looked at like, this is like everyone I've actually had 2 conversations with, not like the whole list. And what is interesting, most of my conversations end with women conversations at principal level. And most of my partner conversation, I actually counted there were 4 female partners that I talked to in the whole journey so far. Okay, so that's just from a statistics perspective. Like I went through my list of what I had seen in the last 6 months. Then on the actual questions versus the differences that I'm getting is there is this really interesting HBS article too that talks about preventative versus promotional questions. And this is something as a statistician, I'm always like very fascinated by surveys and, you know, like how do you ask questions and how do people perceive questions? And in this study, they do like a double blind session where they took like a bunch of people, they took a bunch of questions and they said, okay, we're going to, you know, give people the transcript of this and do like a blind study and have people decide if they're going to invest given the answers that they're hearing from these transcripts, and like gender bias, everything is taken out. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of the preventative questions being asked. Okay, so preventative, you can think like, let me just give you an example, is how many daily and monthly active users do you have versus promotional questions. How do you want to acquire customers? Like that's you know, preventative versus promotional question. Now the answer, if I were to answer in a preventative manner versus I answered the preventative question in a promotional manner, there's a big difference, a massive difference in the response of the other side. And I learned this probably like 40 data points in. I would say like about 3 months in, I started realizing that I'm constantly getting these preventative questions. And then I started researching and I realized that women tend to get these preventative questions because some of the biases that, you know, female versus male, like actually like describing the differences, you know, instead of, oh, this person is young and promising being male, or she is young but inexperienced being female, right? So those are the things I had started seeing. And so I took a mission of saying, okay, let me actually go and every preventative question I get now, I start answering with a promotional answer. And I start switching that around. And I have to say, like, that has been extremely interesting. Now, when it comes back to angels, there's like angels versus VC. The biggest thing for me, I think my personal biggest challenge, like personal and professional, like the professional challenge is very much Topple a deep tech company, right? And so it's much easier for an angel to understand and write the check than for a actual VC or a principal to understand and have to go pitch this to a partner. So what I've seen is the moment I actually get introduction to the partner as my first intro, I keep those conversations going much longer. Most of the funds I talk to the partner first, I'm still in conversation with. Whereas, you know, where I had to go and actually help the principal understand what to go pitch to the partner. That was a very interesting, you know, approach. But yeah, with angels and VCs, that was my biggest thing, is pitching to someone individually versus helping someone understand what you do to be able to resell it to the partner.
So how much do you think, how much do you attribute that to Topple, which is a complicated blockchain company, versus you being a woman? So having to have a messenger deliver the message, is it more about the fact that, you know, here you are a blockchain company, or here you are a woman and a blockchain company, or here you are a woman?
I mean, seeing that I don't have a Bayesian updating background, like I don't have some prior data to say that. I do think it has, the bias of woman has a piece, right? Because it is a thing of, you know, she's enthusiastic, but she might be weak. Or, you know, instead of, oh, she's aggressive and really good entrepreneur, right? So I do think those biases exist, right? The actual, you know, someone re-pitching me we have to think about exactly the stats you were reading earlier. Let's go back to what people see as a successful entrepreneur. You know, do I have to like wear a hoodie and, you know, like, do I have to be male? Like, I think those are things that I'm going to lie if I don't say it's going through my mind, right? Like it has like gone through my mind. Is like, you would not ask me this question if I was a man, but I also have been in that situation my whole life. You know, like I have been, I'm going to share a silly thing. When I was 14, there was a track meet I had to compete in, and my there were no women running, so it was only me. And so they said, oh, they're going to cancel the race. And so my dad went and said to the actual like organizers of the meet, she needs to go to nationals. She needs to get iterations and let her run against the guys. And so he put me in the male race, and they did it. They actually put me, and I got second place. And
whoa!
So what happened actually in that race was also my then boyfriend, who actually left me after that race because I beat him. But I grew up very much like in this setting where if you cannot, actually do something, join them, right? Like, and I'm not saying, like, don't get me wrong, those athletes would beat me at 18, 19, 20. At 14, we were very much similar, like speeds, agility, but they would have definitely beat me back then. But I think that like mentality where my dad was like, no, you need to do more, right? And, like that had put me in a math degree as an undergrad with 0 men, right? And a stats PhD, where literally when I came in, one of the professors told me, you'll never be as good as your male counterparts, like to the words. And so I've seen a lot of that. So now pitching VCs, yes, Topple's very complex, but I do see the same actual biases that I've seen throughout my journey. But yeah, I mean, like I feel like you kind of have to be a part of the change, right? Like I have to just push through, I have to persevere, I have to have wicked resolve, right? I have to just keep on keeping on. And it might take me much longer to get to my funding goals. But I do think like when I get to my funding goals, I will be able to make sure that this Topple goes much further because I had to work a little bit harder. It's kind of my
female founders. That is fascinating. Kim, I think you should put this into writing and no, I'm serious, and put it either
I have an awesome
in the Medium or
really hard.
Or actually Natalie could write about you. Natalie Harms said you're the coolest person she knows. I'd read the Kim Rath memoir. I love that. That is a great story, but it's so true that we have to be in certain situations. We have to be better. I mean, we have to at least, and we're judged on performance rather than potential, as somebody said it here. But it's interesting, not that this affects Toppl so much, but does affect other businesses that, 90% of women say they go out of their way to buy from women-led companies. Women make 85% of consumer purchasing decisions. They make 89% of financial services decisions are made by women in terms of, I guess that's household and sustainability factors, I think influence our decisions more than our male counterparts. So are you seeing that as well? You said you had 40% of your investors are women, which I find fascinating. That's the angel investors, right?
Yes. So we raised $1 million, and so it was about 400K of it actually came from female individual investors because it was all angels. So I see the same thing. Because Toppl has a little bit of an emerging market twist to it too. I do see a lot of people that have the actual experience in emerging markets or actually have access to, agricultural supply chain. So a lot of the industry expertise that kind of comes with who Topple's catering to, I see a lot of those people grabbing hold on the problem, the actual pain points of the problem we're solving. But then I do see, the social impact, because we are an impact tech company, right? So it's about the actual impact piece and the technology marrying. I do see a lot more, I would call it advocates, because I have these senior associates and I can name the funds where I have senior associates and principals at funds that are like champions for Toppl. I mean, I have seen them pitch other funds on Toppl if their partners don't want it, right? So I've seen a lot of women champions for Toppl just inside these funds. And I do think like that's one of the frustrations that I've actually had a conversation with some of these associates is their frustration or these principals that they cannot make that final decision and that there is no female at the partner level that can kind of resonate with the things that they're putting up. And so I think that's a very interesting, actually thinking about female invest. I think you gave the statistics earlier about the actual partners having a female in the partner, circle investing into female founders. That's where I see it also very interesting. But yeah, I do see a synergy in female investors very much. I don't know, easier to talk to them. It's like we have wine nights. My team, actually, we have woke woman wine nights on Wednesdays. And we had this summer, I had like a bunch of Cornell interns, because Cornell has this social business consulting group. So I had like we were like 10 women in my team. And so on Wednesday evenings, we would do these wine nights, right? Where I kind of just like asked a bunch of questions for, woman questions, where I just probe a little bit and say, what is your challenges you're facing at Cornell as a computer science undergrad? What is the challenges you're facing? Like one of them is actually from Rice. Like, how do you feel about those things? And just giving people a little bit of a platform to speak. Again, I have been surrounded with some amazing male counterparts, right? My co-founders promoting me to become the CEO, my dad promoting me to be. I think that's the other side of this, is becoming champions for each other is also extremely important. But yeah, I mean, this is
there's another HBR article that on women funding women. So here it is. It's a 2016 article. I'm going to put it in the chat room now that you mention it. You might not have didn't mention the article, but mention the idea. I don't know how to get this in there. It's from 2016, and it's God, maybe I can just drag it. Copy. Here we go. Paste. Okay. Here we go. It's here it is. It's research agenda. It's a startup success disappears when women fund women. So I really do think. You like HBR Women at Work is a great podcast. That's true. Somebody just said that. Lori just said. So the article, talks about the idea, and I see this. So when we get involved, when we invest in a company, we like to take, as I said, a board seat, a board observer role, get very involved, because we know that the founder is going to have a crisis at 11 o'clock at night, and they're going to want to text somebody. And if they know that we're there for them, and we feel their pain, we actually know the situation they're in, because somebody talked about work-life balance in the chat room. We know they're sitting at home with their children, because all of you female founders, many of the female founders that I know have kids. They're at home now. The kids are out of school, or they're in online school or whatever during COVID. They're running a freaking business. They're pulling their hair, trying to raise at the same time. They're trying to run the business. Who better to understand that than somebody in the same position as them, which is us, right?
I think that is honestly, right now, as I'm fundraising, I'm literally saying, I would love to have kids in the next 3 years. I think I need to bring in some female-focused funds, because they might understand me wanting to have kids and run this company. So that's the truth. That's right. The whole truth of Kim. I'm literally that's what I think about every day. It's how do I make sure that, I can have children in the next 3 years, and I'm not oh no, she needs to be the CEO of this company. That's all she should be. And then you may get certain glances from non-women VCs going, wait, how are you going to run your company and have kids? Well, all I could say is the most gritty, persistent female founders, the ones in our portfolio, and the ones that I've met, and the ones that I know, they do it. And this just shows their determination and their grit and their energy. And balance is a troubling concept, because I don't know. I think balance is something that is different for everybody. But the idea of having a female on your team, and especially an institutional female on your team, who you can call every day, every week, or text any time of day, and I do get a lot of texts from my female founders, and talk about an issue or talk through an issue. And we see so much. We see so many companies. We talk to so many investors. We understand the landscape. As a VC, we constantly have to read these articles that come across, and constantly have to post. I got to be up to date. I got to know what's going on.
And it really, really helps. And we're able to, we understand and we want to be there for our founders. So I could see what,
I love these comments.
What's that?
I am enjoying these comments right now. They're really good.
Perhaps we'll run the company like men with children. I love it. Yes, you guys, this is such a great. I mean, there were 100 people on this call. I'm guessing a lot were women. So I just wanted to make mention and ask you if you felt this impact. So you know that the tendency for people is to go to people they know, and so the tendency for funders, if they're men, is to fund people who look like them or they know or come from their network, and that results in this circular effect of more men getting funding. So during COVID, when people could only communicate by Zoom, there was a study that showed in the first quarter that funding for women went down even more because they were the unknown. They had a harder time getting, especially if they're first-time founders, getting the attention of male VCs, because people wanted to go to fear. They wanted to go. They went from fear of missing out to fear of looking dumb. There was that article, FOMO to fold. So they went to what they tended to go to what they knew. Portfolio managers like myself were also looking out. There's my dog. We're also looking out for their current portfolio companies. But in terms of looking for new investments, they didn't want to go too far out of their comfort zone. Did you feel that during COVID, other than the fact that everybody was sort of reassessing and people stopped? Well, they didn't stop investing, but they were timid about investing.
Yeah, I have to say, I definitely had the sense of, I last year when I finished raising, I did this podcast with Founder Street in California called How I Raised It. And one of the things that they had me talk about is social hacking. How am I actually social hacking into all these different networks? Because I'm, being a statistician, a network effect person, right? If you could know this person and this person, but they're actually a node in the system, you can actually try and penetrate their whole networks. And so if two people interact and they're like, oh yes, we know Kim, that makes me, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows of you. That becomes important. And so that kind of mindset is what I kind of did again now. I realize how difficult it is because I'm not in the, blockchain, Andreessen Horowitz, Pantera, there's 5 funds, multiple, in San Francisco. I'm not in their network. They don't know me. They don't know who I am. I'm one of the only female blockchain CEOs that exist in the space. They're probably you're not from Ukraine, because a lot of the blockchain sphere is actually from one of the European countries. And I'm yeah, but I am South African, and Elon, we should have that conversation. No, but it was definitely a much more challenging thing to do. It's the networks I had to try and go after, the actual people I had to ask for introductions. What is interesting in March, I actually had 2 trips planned. One was to New York to meet with a few funds, and the other one was to San Francisco to actually go meet with Andreessen. I had met Scott Cooper. He's from Houston originally, so I was able to get an introduction to him. But
so
then
tell us about that. I want to dive into the Andreessen, because you're one of the few female founders that I've met that have actually talked to Andreessen Horowitz, and they have a mystique. But keep going. And by the way, I know COVID's still here, but the reason I said during COVID as a past tense thing was because everybody was adapting to Zoom. I think more people are adapting to Zoom now. But keep going, Kim. Sorry.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, team. Just 5-minute warning.
Okay.
Got it.
Got it. No, so I think it definitely was what I would say from that relationship. I still like them a lot. It is something that I will have to build a relationship, because one where there's a lot of factors, right? There's not just a female factor. There's the actual Houston factor, the actual being from the flyover. There is, there's a bunch of different things that we can discuss on that topic. But then I think it is also just not being in that network matters. Networks truly do matter. And I think it's not, I'm not saying with them, it might not have been, if I wasn't a bro club that, everyone was a part of, maybe I don't know. But if I can get myself into more and more networks that intersect with their networks, it becomes very interesting. But yeah, I'm excited to, keep that conversation going. It's still going. It will be future round conversation. Also, we're raising way too little for someone like them. My size of my checks are too small right now. So yeah, it was a pleasant-ish experience. It was very methodical. I can say that. It was I did get a survey after, I know this is being recorded. I did get a survey afterwards asking how your experience was, which was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do think that, the personal touches to smaller funds I am a fan of, but I'm all for, excitement in the space. So it's a challenge. I like the challenge. I definitely would love for them to still stay on our radar. But yeah, I mean, like, they're not the be all and end all. I've actually seen people with way more know-how in our space than them.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So we so are you now able to, are people now meeting more face to face? I know we are not traveling, but in certain parts of the country we are meeting face to face. And has that become, is it easier? I mean, I think that's a redundant question. Is it easier face to face?
Yes, I personally am a more conversational person. So I do think it helps because you can read certain behaviors and you could react to certain things. But yeah, I do think it's easier, and I have started meeting face to face. So I do think it depends on person's flavor.
Yeah. So for those founders on the phone, what pearls of wisdom do you have in the last 3 minutes for the female founders that are in a raise or haven't raised or, thinking about raising? Give us a few words from your experience.
Firstly, Sarah, yes, I am fully aware there are other blockchain female CEOs. I actually know a few of them. There's actually a channel for us called She 256. It is a diversity in blockchain community. I love that community. But yes, definitely, I've met a few of them. From a founder perspective, I always say, there's 3 things: indomitable courage, wicked resolve, and I would say probably the third thing has to do with intellect. But I think those 3 things married to each other, actually thinking through, intellect, resolve, and courage, having grit is key. Keep on keeping on. If you truly believe in what you're doing, there will be others that come alongside you. I do want to say one thing. Sometimes your baby is ugly and you might have to listen. So you might have to actually think about the changes you could make. I know you cannot change the baby, but I mean, in this case, I do think not being too married to to critical feedback being bad. Noise signal, make sure you cancel out that noise and really do go for feedback. I think being open for having feedback and taking feedback and really changing things, but also just being very stern in your decisions is also important, not just catering to everyone. I think those are learned.
And remember, when economies do better. Thank you, Viviana, for quoting Christine Lagarde. There's so many great quotes that are similar to that. So Eduardo, I think we're at 10:44. I didn't want to cut off without saying goodbye, and thank you so much, Kim. Thank you to everybody who joined. Thank you, Eduardo.
Absolutely. Kim and Leslie, I know I speak on behalf of the DEC, the City of Dallas, and the people in the audience. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for your time, for your courage. Even as a male myself, I learned so much in this panel. So thank you for your candor. I think this will be an incredibly valuable session for both women that are wanting to be on the investing side and women that are wanting to be on the startup side as well. I know that for people in the audience, I feel comfortable saying that Leslie and Kim would be happy to connect with you after the session. So if you can add them on LinkedIn or whatever might be easier for you both. And that they'd be happy to support the ecosystem. I know Dallas has been ranked as a pretty good place for women entrepreneurs, and we want to be not a pretty good place, but the best place. So we appreciate all you do, Kim and Leslie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Likewise. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.